How is ethnicity dealt with in Australian cinema and TV? According to Andrew Jakubowicz, since the bicentenary in 1988, the incorporation into comedy of the problem of ethnic diversity has increased substantially. This essay seeks to identify how and why humour is used to showcase these identities to the audience. Sydney Morning Herald writer David Dale labelled the increase of European ethnicities on screen as wogsploitation, entertainment designed to pull money from the children of immigrants and those that like to laugh at them. Elise Donnelly says that wogsploitation films are coming to redefine Australian culture and restructure the traditional Ocker Australian stereotype.
Previously, ethnic stereotypes were subject to the satirical and mocking expressions of humour by Australian comedians. This may have been a reflection of the xenophobic feelings the nation was experiencing as Australia grappled with its national identity and increasing multiculturalism. Tony Michel asserts that Anglo-Australian comedians of the 1980s would fetishise the social and cultural otherness of non-English-speaking migrants so as to make them seem less threatening to Anglo audiences. Mark Michel's character, Con the Fruiterer, is a notable example, created in 1984 after being served by two Greek Australian fruiterers. Michel's character captured the essence of the Australian stereotype, speaking in a heavily broken English accent, parodying Greek behavioural idioms. With frequent airtime on Channel 10's sketch show, The Comedy Company, from 1988 to 1990, Con the Fruiterer was one of the first characters to bring wogsploitation to the forefront of Australian comedy.
Leslie Speed recognises that the term wog was formerly a label of racial vilification, but has since been reclaimed by Australians of European descent to refer to and celebrate their ethnic identities.
It took me ages to bleach my mustache.
Then why didn't you get dressed up?
I am dressed.
Good. You look very Greek.
Acropolis Now was an Australian sitcom that screened from 1989 to 1992, based in a Greek bar of the same name. Actor Nick Giannopoulos plays Jim, the bar owner in the series, already made famous in the comedy stage show Wogs Out of Work. Tongue-in-cheek cultural references and mocking jokes weren't seen as offensive, but rather as an engaging form of cultural diversity in entertainment. Xenophobic audiences would be more welcoming to these cultural groups, showing that they aren't afraid of poking fun at others or themselves.
Karen Louise Wood says that Australia has a varying culture, which explains the adaptation of the identity in crisis argument. Humour is used to resolve these feelings and foster acceptance of ethnicity into society. The 7-year-long SBS series Pizza combined dark humour with a collaboration of ethnic stereotypes, being nominated for 4 Logie Awards. The series protagonist, Paulie Falzoni, is of Spanish, Maltese and Italian descent and is joined by characters including Habib, a Lebanese drug dealer, Davo, a pot-smoking Aussie, alcohol-obsessed Kev the Kiwi, and Bobo, the pizza chef with a Vietnamese bride. Beginning in the 1990s as the Tropfest brainchild of Maltese-Australian entertainer Paul Fennick, pizza's popularity exploded thanks to a clever blend of ironic and self-conscious ethnic humour that both Anglo and migrant Australians could relate to. The success of productions like Fennick's Pizza are important vehicles not only for the comedians, but as Mark Rainbird notes, equally important for the minority groups through which their voices can be heard.
This was me back at school, a typical Aussie kid. Well, if that's what they were going to call me, that's what I was going to be.
Nick Giannopoulos became the poster boy for second-generation Australians everywhere through the 2000 film The Wog Boy, playing the Greek-Australian Steve, best mates with Frank, played by Vince Colosimo. Labelled as the worst doll-bludger in Australia, Steve capitalises on his unfortunate fame and becomes known as the Wog Boy. The use of the label wog in this instance is a term of endearment and popularity, representing how public perceptions of European ethnicities has changed in a positive manner. Steve lightheartedly represents the struggle with his identity that many European Australians would experience. The sequel, Wog Boy 2, Kings of Mykonos, sees the character Steve return to the screen as an Australian icon. This film is set in Greece, with Steve as a slight outsider because he is seen by the locals as Australian. Regardless of the success of these films, the interactions between the Greek and Australian identities, as well as Steve trying to identify to both his cultures, mirrored the reality of the nation during this time. The comedy used to create stereotypical characters became a talking point for all the right reasons.
The Wog Boy. Who am I supposed to be? Zorba Dundee?
In recent years, there has perhaps been no greater Australian comedic breakout than that of Sydney native Chris Lilly. The 2005 six-part series We Can Be Heroes sees Lilly portray, among others, the story of a 23-year-old Chinese physics student, Ricky Wong. Throughout the series, we see Ricky complete his PhD in solar energy physics and chase his subversive passion for acting with the University Theatre Group. Robert Johnson notes that Ricky Wong is a deliberately tokenistic representation of our cultural diversity and reminds us that the character stereotypes of the 70s and 80s no longer reflect our national identity.
We fish off the boat because we're all islanders, like Samoans and Tongans.
Yeah, we got a reputation for being like really tough and stuff, and teachers are fully scared of us.
Yeah.
They have this rule where
This ethnicity complex is carried through to his 2007 project Summer Heights High, which focuses heavily on the fictional Tongan 8th grader Jonah Takalua. Jonah is stereotypical of the Australian media's depiction of the rough but affable island boy, and much of the humour in Summer Heights High rests on Lilly's portrayal of the ethnic differences between Jonah and his non-islander classmates. Jonah's character also highlights the racist undertones that still permeate modern Australia, seen through his constant altercations with the Anglo 7th grader Kieran, with such phrases as "we grew here, you flew here" scrawled across Jonah's locker. Kieran represents the unresolved nature of Australian identity, the constant lock between new cultural diversity and old racial hostility.
Through the use of stereotypical characters, humorous situations, slang, cultural jargon and comic devices, ethnic differences in Australia entertainment has gradually become more accepted and cherished as an integral part of the national identity. Humour is non-confronting and engaging to all audiences, and in this instant proves a useful means to break down the barriers of cultural understanding and promote the value of all ethnicities in building an all-inclusive Australian identity.